Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for coming and welcome to the Basics of Bugs. And so this is our first video during the week, and we will be having daily videos at 12 p.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday this week. And so we will be recording these videos and putting them up on YouTube. So if you know somebody who wants to watch this series but maybe can't make it to the live broadcast, then you can share our YouTube link, and we'll be giving you more information about that later. If you have a question, please feel free to type it in the chat box, and we have some great moderators, Autumn, Lewis, and Chelsea, who will be answering questions. So any questions you have, just put them in the chat box. My name is Madison, and I'm a graduate student here at Auburn, and I will be the first teacher for this lesson. So we're going to go ahead and get started with our Kahoot quiz. So I'm going to let Lewis share his screen, and he will be conducting our Kahoot quiz. Are you ready, Lewis? There we go. Okay, so we are going to start the Kahoot in just a second. So like I said, you can go to kahoot.it, or you can use your mobile app and then put the pin in. And basically, if you're on a browser, you might have to switch back and forth between the Zoom and then the Kahoot website if you're like in full screen. So you might have to switch back and forth. But if everybody's ready, we can go ahead and get started.
Hold on. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lewis. I'm not sure if I was introduced, but I'll be today's moderator for today's lecture. And I guess we'll get started and let the games begin. Let's get started. Great job, Awesome Boa, and Happy Mouse and Bronze Macaw.
Great job, everybody. So that kind of gives me a better idea of kind of what points to emphasize during this lesson. So you guys all have pretty good entomological knowledge, it seems like. Okay, so before we get started, just kind of a warning, if you maybe are young or maybe you're kind of sensitive to like some scary bugs, there are gonna be some pictures of some bugs that some people might think are scary during this lesson. But I think one of the goals of these lessons is just to help you kind of become more familiar with bugs. And I think it's easier to not be afraid of something when you know about it. So that's kind of one of the goals of this lesson. And so hopefully by the end of this series, you will kind of see how important bugs and insects are and learn how to appreciate them. So this lesson is called What is a Bug, right? And so our course is titled The Basics of Bugs. And of course that sounds really cool, but really what is a bug? You know, if you see like a thing in your house that's creepy crawly and it's got more than 6 legs, is it an insect? Is it a bug? So we're going to talk about kind of exactly what a bug is and then maybe narrow it down and look at what insects are. And so just another reminder that everything is being recorded, and so you can watch this later on YouTube. And so like, you know, we're asking the question, well, what is exactly a bug? That definition just seems so if you think about the first question, the Kahoot quiz, which might have tripped you up a little bit, you know, what exactly is an arthropod? What does that mean? So the name arthropod means jointed foot. And so this name makes sense because all arthropods have legs that have joints. So arthropods are invertebrates, right? So they do not have a skeleton on the inside. They have a skeleton on the outside, and it's sort of like armor, and so it helps protect them. All arthropods also have segmented bodies. So most arthropods, but not all, have a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. And so you can see down here at the bottom, this ant has a very clear head, thorax, and abdomen. And so arthropods are so cool. They're the most common animals on Earth. 80% of all animals are arthropods. So they're so important, you know, to our world, and they do a lot of things that affect our lives. So now we're going to talk about the different groups of arthropods, and hopefully that will help us narrow down what is a bug, what is an insect. So the first group of arthropods are called chelicerates. These chelicerates have structures called chelicerae, and so they sort of look like fangs or little claws near the mouth. And so they help the animal eat. On the right here is a scorpion, and you can see that the chelicerae here just look like little claws, and so that helps the scorpion put food into its mouth. In the middle here is a spider, and you can see the chelicerae on this spider. They're really pretty. They're like emerald green, and so on the end of those chelicerae are going to be fangs, and so those fangs are going to inject, venom into the prey. And also horseshoe crabs are chelicerates. So you might not know that horseshoe crabs are related to spiders and scorpions. So that's really cool. Did you guys know that? If you're just looking like above the horseshoe crab, you might not really see the resemblance. However, if you flip that horseshoe crab over, it looks a lot like a scorpion. So that's really cool. So I want you to look between the legs in the middle. Can you see the chelicerae? They kind of look like little pinchers, and they help, they'll help the horseshoe crab eat. Can you see them? They are, there we go. Did you find them? They're in between the legs, and they look like just like little pinchers. So we can see that some chelicerates live on land and some chelicerates live in the water. So that's pretty cool. So the next group are crustaceans, and these have at least 4 pairs of legs, and they might be claws or legs that they walk on. And so if you love seafood, you know crustaceans, right? They're crabs and shrimp and lobsters. So when you think about crustaceans, you think about animals that live in the water, right? But there's also another type of crustacean that lives on land, and you might not have known this was a crustacean, but this is called a pillbug, or some people call it a roly-poly. So they curl up in a ball to protect themselves. So this is really cool. These are crustaceans. And so we can see some crustaceans live on land, some crustaceans live in the water. So they're all crustaceans. So that's just really a cool thing about arthropods. They can live almost anywhere. And then our third group are called myriapods. So you probably, recognize myriapods from all of those legs. The name myriapod means 10,000 feet. Well, thank goodness they do not actually have 10,000 feet. That would make them really creepy, creepier than they already are. So centipedes and millipedes, they don't have 10,000 feet. Centipedes can have as few as 30 feet. And the world record for legs on a millipede, I think, is 750 on the leg millipede is what they call it. And so what's cool about myriapods is that when they first hatch, they have fewer segments and fewer legs. And then as they grow and as they molt, they will add segments and add legs. So next, we're going to look at a common myriapod that you may have seen in your house. So this is called a house centipede. And yeah, they're really creepy. There's so many legs. Can't really tell where the head is. So a lot of people kind of get a little creeped out by these things. I totally understand. But they're actually probably really helpful. In your house, they will eat those pest insects that you don't want, like ants and cockroaches and silverfish. They will eat them. So if you see a lot of house centipedes in your home, it probably means that you have a lot of pest insects that you may need to take care of. So myriapods are a little creepy, but they do a lot of good things. And then the last group of arthropods we call hexapods. And so, of course, this name means 6 feet, and all hexapods have 6 legs as adults. And they include insects, just like the familiar insects that caterpillars and butterflies, ladybugs, but they also contain some animals that are not insects, but that do have 6 legs. So this is called a collembolan, and collembolans are not actually insects because their mouths are inside of their body, while adult insects have mouths that are outside of their body. So not all hexapods are insects, but most are. So now that we've gone over those groups of arthropods, well, which arthropods are bugs? So when most people use the word bug, they mean an arthropod that lives on land. And so just like we've seen, some arthropods live on land and some live in the water. So the ones that live on land are like spiders and scorpions, centipedes, millipedes, pillbugs, and of course the insects. So the word bug, the definition may change if you're talking to different people, but I think most people mean arthropods that live on land. So do scientists use this word Well, not exactly. We like to use more specific words such as insect or spider. And if we're talking about an arthropod that lives on land, we call them terrestrial arthropods. So in general, we don't really use the word bugs for this definition. But if we're just talking casually in a conversation, we might. However, in science, we actually do use the word bug, but we call these animals true bugs. And so these are types of insects that are called true bugs. You probably know stink bugs or assassin bugs. Those are true bugs. In a later lesson on Friday, we're going to teach you how to identify some different types of bugs, some different types of insects, including true bugs. So now that we've talked about bugs a little bit, what are the characteristics of an insect? What is an insect? Well, we said that all insects are hexapods, right? Because they have 6 legs or 3 pairs of legs. They also have segmented bodies. They have 3 body segments, a head, a thorax, and an abdomen. And if you look over on the right, you can see this ant clearly has 6 legs and then 3 body segments. So, but you might be thinking, what about a caterpillar, right? Doesn't it have more than 6 legs? What about all those body segments? Is it still an insect? Well, all adult insects have 6 legs and 3 body segments. So you probably think of maybe like a maggot, which is like a baby fly. They really don't have those 6 jointed legs. But when they become an adult, they do. But actually, which is interesting, caterpillars do have only 6 real legs. So I want you to look behind the head. Can you see those 6 smaller legs? They look a little bit different than the rest of the legs that are hanging onto the leaf. So these are the 6 real legs. And so we call these thoracic legs because they're attached to the thorax. And so the rest of those legs that are hanging onto the leaf, they're actually on the abdomen and they're not real legs. We call them prolegs. So although there are some immature insects that do not have 6 legs, caterpillars actually do. Are spiders, mites, and ticks insects? Well, we just talked about the number of legs, right? So spiders, mites, and ticks have 8 legs, right? And if you look, you can probably see that they only have 2 body segments. It's kind of hard to tell, but they only have 2 body segments. You might see a mite or a tick that does have 6 legs, but that means that it is not an adult. It is an immature. However, when it grows up and it becomes an adult, it will have 8 legs. So spiders, mites, ticks are not insects. So let's talk a little bit about the insect body and what makes insects really cool. So starting off with the head, the first segment, insect heads have brains, of course, just like us. And like all animals with brains, they're gathering information from all over the body, from the eyes and the antennae and from the hairs on their body. And so they're kind of processing that information in the brain. They have 2 large compound eyes, which they use to see. And some insects have simple eyes called ocelli. And these ocelli, they don't use them to see, but they use them to detect light. So you might be thinking, well, if an insect has 5 eyes, it can see really well, right? Well, not exactly. Actually, insects cannot see as clearly as we can. They don't have the ability to see those small details as we can. So this is a fly. And so if you look closely, you can see that with in the big compound eyes, you have like thousands of small units, sort of like a honeycomb, all these little units. And so if you're watching a movie and you're kind of seeing it through like a fly's eyes, a lot of times Hollywood thinks that insects see like a kaleidoscope, you know, the same picture over and over again, but that's not actually how insects see. Actually, all of those units are working together to gather light and then make one picture. However, the compound eyes are really not good for seeing detail. They can kind of just, you know, see the light, and they can see some colors, but not as much as we can. So they just can't really make that clear picture like we can. So you can see the difference in maybe how an insect might see versus how we might see. But these big compound eyes are really good for detecting motion, right? So if you come up behind a fly and you try to swat it, it's not going to work. That fly is gonna fly away. So the compound eyes are very good for that. So next are the antennae. And so all insects do have 2 antennae, but some are not as well developed as others. And they come in all shapes and sizes. Like just look at this moth, the antennae are really big and they look kind of like feathers. So these antennae are great for detecting like odors and chemicals and smells in the air, and they can use them to find mates. And so antennae come in all shapes and sizes, like this grasshopper, kind of short and thick antennae, this butterfly, sort of dainty antennae, and this longhorn beetle, which of course has really long antennae. And so antennae kind of act like a nose for the insect. They can find food, they can find water. I think mosquito antennae, they kind of use them kind of like in the cockpit of like a jet. They can detect like air pressure and airspeed and things like that. So different types of antennae, they're just really cool. So next are the mouth parts. And like we said, insects have external mouth parts. And so the mouth parts are going to look different depending on what they do, just like with the antennae. So maybe ants, you know, they chew their food, and so they have really strong jaws called mandibles, and they can crush and they can chew their food. Butterflies, of course, are going to have a thin proboscis, which is sort of like a siphon, and they can, like a straw, they can suck out nectar from a flower. And so you can think of it kind of like a straw. Mosquitoes, again, instead of just a normal straw, you might want to think of it like a Capri Sun straw, right? So they're piercing the pouch and they're sucking all the blood out. So yeah, they have mouth parts that are great for piercing and sucking. And this is a true bug, like we talked about. And again, they're kind of like a mosquito, but they don't they don't feed on blood usually. They usually will feed on plants. And so they'll pierce the leaf or the plant, and then they'll suck out the sap. So again, mouth parts are going to look really different depending on what they are used for. And then so next, moving down, we have the next segment, which is the thorax. And so the thorax is where the legs and the wings connect. And inside, some parts of the digestive system are in the side of the thorax. And so if you look at this ant, you can clearly see that all 6 legs are connected to the thorax. And on this dragonfly, the wings, that's where the wings are connected. So let's look at some insect legs. So just like with the antennae and the mouth parts, legs are going to look really different on insects depending on what they do. Some insects are really great runners. You think of like cockroaches and tiger beetles, just like this one. They have legs that are called cursorial legs. So cursorial legs are just great for running. And then you probably think of katydids and grasshoppers. They have those really big hind legs, kind of like a rabbit. They're great for jumping. We call those saltatorial legs. And then praying mantises have really famous forelegs. We call those raptorial legs, and they're great for catching prey and grasping prey. So you can see insect legs just look very different depending on what they're used for. And then wings also. So most insects have 2 pairs of wings. Some do not. What's really cool is that insects are the only arthropods with wings. And we mentioned before that arthropods make up 80% of all animals. Well, insects make up the majority of arthropods. So that means basically most animals on Earth are insects. And there's not a coincidence that insects, you know, are the only arthropods with wings. So these wings have really helped insects become successful on our planet. So this is a fly right here, a hoverfly, and it does have 2 pairs of wings, but it only uses one of those pairs of wings to fly. So you can see the 2 wings on either side. They do have another pair of wings that are very small underneath. Those are called halteres, and they use those more for balance. But a lot of insects have 2 pairs of really well formed wings, just like this dragonfly. They use both of those pairs of wings to fly. However, there are some insects that do not have wings, just like this flea. But you probably, you know about fleas. They don't really need wings, right? they can jump pretty well. All right. So just like with the antennae and the mouth parts, wings look really different on different insects. So like this ladybug and beetles, they have these really hard outer covering wings, which are called elytra. And so when this ladybug, you know, is about to fly, it's going to move those hard wings out of the way, and then those soft membranous wings are going to come out, and those are going to do the flying. With cockroaches, the outer wings are not hard. They're actually really like soft and leathery. We call these tegmina. And so these are protecting the pair of wings underneath. So not all cockroaches can fly. Like this cockroach, for example, is a death's head cockroach. It cannot fly, but it still has 2 pairs of wings. And then probably some of the most famous wings in the insect world are butterflies and moths. And so these are scaly wings, you know that they have beautiful patterns and colors. And so they can use these patterns and colors to maybe scare predators off. And if you've ever like held, you know, a butterfly wing in your hand, you know that the scales are very delicate and they'll sort of fall off. So the last part of the insect is going to be the abdomen. And so this, you know, inside is going to contain the intestines, like the digestive system and the excretory system. They also contain spiracles. So if you ever wonder, how does an insect breathe? Well, they have little openings in their abdomen and also on their thorax called spiracles. And you can see this yellow caterpillar here, those black dots, those are the spiracles. So abdomens, you know, are going to look different on different insects. Like this dragonfly has a really thin and skinny abdomen. You know, like cockroaches, maybe they have like really big and fat abdomens. So, you know, different parts of the body on different insects are just going to look really different depending on what that insect does. So finally, let's talk about some insect life cycles. So you probably know the term metamorphosis, right? And you think of like a butterfly. So that is complete metamorphosis. In entomology, we call these insects holometabolous insects. So it's not just butterflies and moths, beetles, flies, ants, they also have complete metamorphosis. So first, you know, the adult is going to lay the eggs. The adult female will lay the eggs, and out from the eggs, the larva will emerge. And these larvae are going to eat and grow, and they will molt and molt until they reach a certain size. Then they will make a pupa. And so in this pupa is kind of when all the changes are happening. And then, you know, out comes the adult. So in this case, a butterfly comes out of a chrysalis. So this is complete metamorphosis. They go through 4 different stages. So the other type of insect life cycle is called incomplete metamorphosis. We call these insects hemimetabolous. So grasshoppers and cockroaches and true bugs, these are all going to go through incomplete metamorphosis. So the different stages are going to be the egg, and then from the egg is going to come a nymph. We use the term nymph. And so this nymph is going to kind of look like a smaller baby version of the adult insect. And so just like with the larvae that we just talked about, they're going to eat and grow and molt, and they'll get bigger and bigger. And then eventually when they're ready to molt into an adult, they will do that. You're probably familiar with cicadas, right? So you know that the nymphs live underground and they eat roots. And then when they're ready to molt into an adult, they'll come up on a tree, they'll climb on the tree, and then they will molt to an adult. So if an insect is going to be gaining wings, as an adult, it will usually gain those full wings after it molts, while it molts to an adult. And so on the left here, these are aphids, and you can see that the aphid nymph looks a lot like the adult. It's just sort of a smaller version of it. Okay, so let's review. What is an arthropod? Well, we talked about arthropods are animals that have jointed legs, external skeletons, and segmented bodies. What's really cool is that some live on land and some live in water, so they're basically everywhere on our planet. Okay, what is a bug? Well, again, the term bug is sort of vague. It may mean something different to different people, but I think most people usually mean it as an arthropod that lives on land, like a spider or centipede, butterfly, or a roly-poly, like we talked about. There may be some people who call like lobsters bugs, and in a way they kind of are. So the term bug can kind of mean different things. So what is an insect? Well, like we said, an insect is an arthropod that has 6 legs and 3 body segments. And most insects have wings, but some do not. Okay, so for the kids, we have some really fun activities that you can do to kind of show, you know, what you've learned. So the first one is to make an edible insect. And so you're going to need marshmallows. You might want to use like big marshmallows and small marshmallows, toothpicks, pretzel sticks, and then some sort of like frosting or peanut butter. And you're going to be putting the marshmallows onto the toothpick. And then you will use the pretzel sticks as legs. And then you can decorate your insect using some candy or something. And so some questions that you can ask are, well, how many marshmallows or body segments do we need for each insect? And how many pretzels or legs do we need to make an insect? You can also make spiders using this. So think about how many legs, how many body segments, how many marshmallows do I need if I wanted to make a spider? And then a second activity is going to be color and cut, and then assemble an insect. And so if you go to our Facebook page, we have a Google Drive folder that we have shared, and all the activities and materials will be put into that folder. So these are some like printables, and you can kind of cut out the different parts of this insect. And your challenge is to figure out where the antennae, the legs, and the wings go. Which body segment will they go? All right, so that is the end of our presentation. I just want to thank you all for listening. Thank you very much to our moderators, Lewis, Autumn, and Chelsea, and to our department and club. And want to make sure that we answer all the questions. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the chat and answer some questions if we have any. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. We got started a few minutes late, but okay, so the link, if you go on our Facebook page, which is Auburn Entomology or Auburn University Entomology and Plant Pathology Club, one of our posts, I put a link to our Google Drive folder. We can also share that again if needed be.